everyone. And so without further ado, Scott, thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got here, and what the process was for you becoming CEO here.
Hey, thanks, Rich, and I appreciate you having me, and good luck with the whole event. It sounds like it's going to be great, and you got a great lineup. I go back to starting in this business right out of college. It's actually my grandfather began in the real estate business almost by default. Just a quick sort of family anecdote is my grandfather was a big art collector, and so he made a living manufacturing aluminum art easels. And we have this famous story and actually footage in our family of my grandfather walking down Brighton Beach, pulling two wooden beach chairs, and behind him is my grandmother, wailing her arms. And supposedly what she was saying was, "Schmuck, why are you making aluminum art easels? Why don't you make aluminum beach chairs?" Yes. And so a light bulb went off in his head, and he and his brother and brother-in-law actually applied for the patent for the aluminum beach chair and invented the aluminum beach chair, and built a big business on the manufacturing and distribution of these chairs, and then ultimately sold that business, kept the real estate. And as part of our family's approach to everything that we had done, there's really been very focused on being sort of customer centric and adopting new technologies and innovation as we've grown our business and approaching real estate in that same approach, rather than just being sort of a traditional build a building developer. But how do you actually build a business with a competitive edge that meets a customer's needs, that provides a solution that didn't exist before? And so I came into the business after college, took the company public in 1995 with a view the world was changing a little bit like it has been today, maybe not as much as today, but for the real estate industry in the early 90s. And so it was an opportunity to sort of consolidate the industry. And we took the company, which at the time was $300 million, grew it to being the largest, or one of the largest owners of office, logistics, student housing in the New York metro area, and some national footprint, and sold the company in January of 2007 for $6.5 billion. And the same day formed RXR. And we sold the company because our customers' businesses were changing so quickly, and they needed so much more flexibility, and the type of solutions that they would get historically from real estate were changing. And the public markets were so restrictive as to enabling us to shift our product offerings in the way we approached our customers and our community, that we felt we needed a longer term capital source and a different approach to the business. And we thought we'd be better off without the legacy assets of the past and being able to approach the future. And I always say, you never want to be a prisoner of the past. You want to be a pioneer of the future. And so we started RXR, raised now over $8.5 billion of private equity from investors that are the global pensions and sovereigns that believe in our vision of thinking about real estate as solutions for customers and community, and trying to think of it almost real estate as a service, and not just about building four walls, but activating what happens within those four walls. And thinking about our customers not as tenants, but just that, customers. We're in the real estate industry, it's much more of a tenant-landlord relationship. Ours is a client relationship to our tenants. And so as we began to build out RXR with that philosophy, we've very much focused on the creative class type of companies, and as they were expanding, and built a large portfolio of office buildings, 25 million square feet. We're one of the largest owners of office properties in New York City. Also have focused on how do you create new affordable housing projects, but for young professionals, not the traditional regulatory affordable housing, and started to reimagine downtowns that were by train stations outside the city. And in the heyday, those downtowns were the center of business and activity. But over time, people began to move away from the downtowns, and they moved away businesses moved to office parks and retail moved to malls. So they were long parking lots and short economic generation. And so we have made deals with some of the biggest downtowns around New York City where we're the master developer and can build on all those municipal parking lots and municipal land and then help them reactivate those downtowns. So we have built or have built now 3,000 units built, another 3,000 under construction right now, multifamily, and have a pipeline of another 6,000 behind that we're building. Same in logistics, where we've just built for Amazon their first multi-level, or actually building for Amazon their first multi-level 1.3 million square foot logistics facility for last mile logistics. And infrastructure, where we're building for JetBlue at JFK, a Terminal 6 and a Terminal 7, and thinking about the future of aviation, future of travel in that regard. And so really trying to take a holistic, follow the customer, follow what's happening in the community, and grow our business accordingly. And we do that really by every year we write a white paper where we reflect on what's happening in the world, where we're seeing the major trends. We quote the case, say, look at it eyes wide open, and then use that to recalibrate for that new reality, and then be in a situation where once we decide what we think is going to happen, have conviction on those beliefs, and no matter what's happening around us or what our peers are doing, drive through straight ahead towards that conviction. And it also gives us discipline, where when things come in that sound exciting but aren't consistent with that position, we pass quickly, and it gives us a baseline that we can then continually look back on to see are we on course or not, and do we need to recalibrate. So in 2019, our white paper at the time was entitled RXR 2.0, and it was about the realization that as an industry, real estate had been woefully underinvesting in its digitization. If you look at the list of top industries, real estate's third from the bottom, right above healthcare and government. Not a place that you want to be proud for innovation on, right? And so we said, we want to lead the digitization of this business, and we saw our customers, particularly as the younger generation was becoming more and more of our customers, their demand for more personalized services and a level of us understanding their needs before they even knew what they wanted, which was what they were getting everywhere else, was something that was required for us to be competitive in the type of places that we were. So we said, how do we, develop digital products to provide that level of personalized service, operate our buildings more effectively, and optimize the experience and performance of our buildings, and optimize and execute how we execute our business. And so we've set up this digital lab where we have 25 data scientists, product development people, and engineers, and an investments team through a digital ventures fund that invests in other prop tech companies that are complementary to what we're doing. And we look at it as sort of merging the physical with the digital to create that experience, what we call the phygital. And that's really our competitive advantage, is having that touch with the customer, but using the data that we get through IoT and AI to really be able to provide a level of service and insights to have a better experience and a more optimized experience. So we've been doing that through this period. And when COVID hit, it was a great accelerant in many ways. And we focused a lot of the energy of what we were doing in the lab to how do we think about bringing our customers back to our office buildings so they were safe, felt safe, changed behaviors, gave them tools to have transparency as the health and wellness of the building, the neighborhood that we're in, telehealth, virtual care, a product we called RxWell in conjunction with Microsoft and with support of McKinsey. And so that has been up and running. And the same thing with our multifamily products, where we've created a whole series of products to help better serve our customers and a level of 5-star hospitality at a price that is no different than renting a traditional multifamily apartment in those communities. And so we have these initiatives that are ongoing, and now in a post-COVID world, we're leaning into reimagining what tools you'll need to navigate the workplace and how people live and work and operate in a urban environment in a post-COVID world with this digital approach.
Gotcha. So one of the things I admire most about you is you're a huge cheerleader for the cities you're in, for the places, for your, the things you're building, and you're not too busy and like, yeah, leave me alone. I don't want to, it's you really believe in what you're doing, and you get out there and you talk it up. It's just not something you see that often, especially from guys that have 25 million square feet of space. Where did that come from? Was that part of the beach chair thing, that it's been customer centric all this time and it just stuck with you? Or is it something that you really had to learn from the real estate business?
Yeah, I think it's part of our value set. Growing up, and it was always being that we will only be as strong as the strength of our communities, and right. So reinvesting in and supporting our communities has always been a key. When we formed RXR, because of that customer and community centric approach, we made it a core value of our business. And if you see behind me, it says doing good and doing well means doing better. That's our core value. And with everything that we work on, every investment, every project, every development, within our business plan, we have a doing good and doing well means doing better section, where we actually talk about how can we enhance the community, the sustainability, make them more equitable, and what are those initiatives, and judge our success, not just on the financial performance, but on also the performance of creating the social impact that goes along with that. So whether that's hiring locally, job training, mentorship, equity programs, diversity programs that we have across the spectrum, that's something that is a key. And I don't know if in Judaism, there's a thing called the tikkun olam, which means literally to repair the world, and we take that to heart to try to do our part in repairing the world.
Gotcha. So would you agree with the statement that RXR 2.0 is sort of your prop tech play? Or is it much more than that? Or am I being too general?
No, I don't think it's more than that. I think it's a holistic. I mean, I think we've built a digital ecosystem that is integrated into our business. And we were very intentional that when we began to focus on building our digital capabilities, that we didn't do it in a vacuum. We had it very integrated with our team members that have the domain expertise in each part of our business. And we set up working groups, one urban living, one called urban workplaces, one called urban experiences. And they meet on at least a weekly basis, where they go through the use cases of where we think technology can help us achieve our objectives better by merging with how we've done it physically before, or reimagining how we've done it before. And so we went through, I would say, the first 6 months of going through that process was a lot about managing sort of a organizational mindset shift. But by the time we got done, our whole organization looks through a lens of not of this is the way it needs to be done because it was done that way before, but rather this is the way it can be done if we want to have a greater impact. And we leverage the attributes and availability of new technologies. And so we've changed the culture of our organization to be one that is all about innovation and being forward thinking from the top all the way down to the bottom.
Got it. So one of the things about our business, like yours, it morphs. And when I first started this business, it was a print magazine. And we've morphed into a digital media company. But at the beginning stages, we were really focused on just the networks and talking to landlords about what do you need to put a DAS system? How do you put in Wi-Fi? How do you protect yourself? All the things that went along with that. And our business then morphed into prop tech and a bit of fintech and many of the other things. I don't want to put you on the spot, but there's so much going on with the networks that are behind all the things you've talked about. Do you have any thoughts on, looking at our friend John Gilbert, who we all know is working on this thing called CBRS right now? DAS for in buildings is a big deal. There's sort of, a movement for poor man's DAS system, which is just, sort of magnifying the signal and rebroadcasting it. Do you have these work groups going through the network part of this also, or is it more just the digital side of the house?
Yeah, so infrastructure is critical, right? And I think, to your point, that this is the infrastructure is what, and new innovations around infrastructure and infrastructure investment today, I would say, particularly, in cloud computing and IoT and AI, enables a lot of this to happen. And, just to give you a quick a rewind, in 1999, we had a vision of creating what I'll call the WeWork before there was WeWork, which was how do we create a product that any small business can compete with any mega global business. And we ended up building a company which was HQ Global, the flexible workplace company at the time, had a payroll company, an insurance company, a broadband company that was all connected to this. And we actually spun it off of our public company, Rechler, for $1 a share. And in 2000, which you remember, that was the big tech bubble in 2000. Yeah. That was our spinoff was the #1 performing stock in the NASDAQ. It went up to $70 a share. And we got up to about $150 million EBITDA in that business. The problem with that business was we didn't have the infrastructure, right? Like a lot of businesses at that time. And so while the vision was there and people saw what the potential of being able to provide this level of service, if you didn't have that infrastructure, if you didn't have that connectivity of the mobile phone and or a computer in your hand, it wasn't viable to make them to the next level. So while a lot of businesses at that time sizzled out in that period, what happened was, though, the seeds were planted during that tech bubble with that infrastructure. It just hadn't started to sprout. Then the tech bubble burst, and long and behold, over time, those seeds began to grow, which then became the infrastructure which we've all then seen start to build, and later in that decade and into today, that's created where we are. And even IoT, to me, it's still such its nascent stage. When you talk to some of the early players or the teams at Microsoft, I mean, you're in the first, inning of what this all is, and so the potential is extraordinary right now because of the amount of infrastructure that has been and is being developed. And then as it's developed, the innovation that's being built on top of that, it becomes self-reinforcing. And the insights that we're all gaining from the data that we're collecting, and then the predictive analytics that you're able to derive from that, and the AI tools that you're able to use with that. So I think that this is really early in this period of what the future is going to hold for the built environment, transforming itself like many of us had imagined, but it was not realistic. But today, this infrastructure and the network systems and all things that you're talking about, make it something that is really tangible, and we're seeing happen real time.
Yeah, how many guys back in those days ran to put fiber in the ground because it was coming, it was going to be there.
Exactly.
Well, 20 years later, that stuff, they abandoned it. 20 years later, it's the most valuable thing you could possibly have. But they were early and everybody lost faith in it. So, so many of those companies went Chapter 11, but that fiber had real value.
Right. Well, listen, with creative destruction are born new ideas, right? And I think that's what we lived through in that period of time. And as I said, it left fertile ground for the next round of companies to build their products on.
So for the folks that are listening in, again, the vast majority of the people that attend are from the real estate business, but for the folks that are, in the wireless and in the networking side of the house, are there things that you and your teams are interested in understanding from the standpoint of the network piece of this? Or do you think your teams are basically up on all the different choices and the different flavors that are out there for the networking piece of it? In other words, the DAS, the CBRS, the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi 6, this, that, do you feel that those folks are getting a full understanding of what's out there
Yeah,
in this
I think a
business?
couple of things, right? One, I'll say, you have Corey Clark coming on one of your panels from our organization who runs our workplace, urban workplace group in the lab, and he's been one of the point people working on that network and seeing, and so I think we've seen everything and we're hearing everything. I think the thing that's interesting to me, and I actually remember having this conversation with John Gilbert a few years ago, is how woefully unprepared building owners were to have enough broadband connectivity within their buildings to be able to accommodate the level of services and communication that we were going to need to do the things we want to do. Right? It's nice to be able to have computer vision cameras, but if you don't have the broadband connectivity to have that data go someplace, then you have a problem on your hands, right? So I think that we've been working hard at trying to think through what are the most effective, um, uh, efficient, and cost and affordable solutions to be able to have the most powerful networks throughout our buildings. And it's one thing just to say you want to focus on the space, the common areas in the lobby, but when you start talking about now thinking about use cases related to how people are working in their workplace and sustainability and measuring energy consumption, or how people are using different amenities, it needs to be ubiquitous. And I don't think many owners have gotten to a point where they have solutions that are ubiquitous yet. We're working towards it, and we're looking at a lot of solutions, but there's no what I'll say, silver bullet, solution that we have found.
Yeah, we in our business we talk a lot about however much fiber you think you need more.
Right.
You're never going to catch up. And John, one of the things about John, he's doing a panel with me at the end of the day tomorrow. One of the things about John is that very early on, he loaded those buildings up with fiber like crazy because once you have the walls open, the material itself is cheap.
Yeah.
But if you got the walls open and you got a few extra bucks to put that in there, let him put it in there. So he was really smart about that. And now it's all playing out that he can take this new network with CBRS that he wants to connect it to all that fiber that's there. And so, he's sort of had a global view of this before most of the other people.
Yeah, no, and I've been collaborating with John for a lot of years, and I agree. He's been at the forefront of this. And I think that's also, one of the things that you've seen in buildings in general, right? That used to be location, location, location. I think today it's going to be the buildings that have the data capacity, that have the sustainability, and have the health and wellness infrastructure that tenants are going to be flocking to, not just location, location, location. And so that's why we've seen a flight to quality as the market has begun this sort of post-COVID recovery. The buildings that have those those elements are seeing 80% of the demand of new tenants in the marketplace.
Yeah, so I would assume you agree with the comment that an A building is not a building that just has a marble lobby and fancy elevators. It's a lot more than that in this day and age. It takes a lot more to attract tenants in this day and age.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the op-ed pieces and the stuff you write and the talks you do. Where do you see the greatest need right now for you to get out there and talk about the return to work, the return of New York City, the strength of the city, and how it all plays out for you personally? You seem to have, it's really in your heart and your soul. And, that's admirable. I mean, if, the city is going to come back stronger than ever. It's going to need a 1970s push where, we came back and the city was saved, if you will. How do you see your role in that?
So the Justice Brandeis had once said that the most important political office is that of private citizen, and I take that to heart, and I think more people need to take that to heart, because I think we as a society in our country have become too accustomed to just leaving things to our elected officials, or not even being as active on voting in the right elected officials, and just pointing fingers versus trying to create change ourselves. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be activists, lead by example, and advocate for the right change. And so that's something that I do and we do at RXR. And I think, just to the city itself, and I'll talk about the workplaces, but to the city, a year ago in our white paper, and actually, I finished our white paper for 2019, which came out in 2020. I was flying home from Hong Kong on January 26th. And when I was in Hong Kong, began to hear about this thing called the coronavirus, and then convened our team, setting up task force meetings and discussing, what are we going to do about this, and added one line to the white paper that said, there's this coronavirus in Asia. If that doesn't get contained, everything in this white paper could be moot. And it not only did it become moot, we ended up throwing away the white paper because it became so irrelevant before we even spent time working on it. And then wrote a new one that was sort of our white paper for sort of the living through COVID, which we finished in just about a year ago last year, or maybe it was the end of May last year. And in it, we said, as you said, total confidence New York's coming back, right? New York's been through crisis, whether it was 9/11, whether it's Superstorm Sandy, the great financial crisis, the epicenter. It's been the epicenter of these crises, and it's been proven time and time again to be resilient. It comes together and it comes back. But the question is, how long, how much damage along the way, and what's it look like on the other side? And that was the open question as we were finishing that white paper last year. And it was the answers weren't clear. And so for the first time, rather than having conviction, we said, this is going to be a living document. And we wrote a list of milestones of things that we were going to follow that would help us determine whether or not, we were following the right course for a quicker recovery, and what that recovery might look like, and what the future of New York might look like, versus a 1970s type recovery, which was over a decade, right? And the challenges were there. And the big things, when you think back to it, right, was, how long was it going to be where people either couldn't coexist with the virus and have the right therapeutics and testing protocols, or best case vaccination programs to get people to coexist with COVID. How are we going to deal with the fiscal challenges that were decimating our municipalities and our state as their budgets had gigantic holes, and at the same time had tremendous costs that were coming to deal with COVID? How are people going to be thinking about the workplace? Were they going to continue to pay rent? Were they going to plan on coming back? Were companies that have made big commitments to New York, like JP Morgan or Facebook or Amazon or Google, continue to move forward with those commitments and be committed to New York? How many of the small businesses and restaurants would be able to survive the carnage, and how long that went? How many of the cultural institutions that make our city great, would they be able to survive this period of time? The same thing for our theater and arts. And so we had a whole list of these different things that we began to follow. And what I'll say, looking at it today, is that we're on the positive side of almost everything on that metric list, right? I mean, we had the vaccine came out, we're over 50% vaccinated in New York today. From a fiscal standpoint, what the federal government has provided, states like New York and cities like New York have filled the hole that was created because of COVID. So while we still have some challenges ahead, nothing like what could have been the case. The companies like Facebook took more space, not less space. Google's out there still growing. JP Morgan's building its new building and moving forward. So you have that commitment. And I think that the biggest thing also, which is one of it, is what drives New York? What drives cities in New York? It's talent. It's talent, right? Talent is in a knowledge economy, that is the fuel that drives the growth of companies. And so if people didn't believe in the quality of life and didn't want to be part of this city, and you didn't have that talent, then why would companies and why would other people want to be here? And what we've seen over the last number of months, really starting at the end of last year, is we've seen a explosion of the return of people to New York. And you look at the multifamily rental market as an example, we're seeing leasing volumes that we haven't seen since 2008, since last December. So that people are saying that many more leases since 2008. And the reason being is that, people want to be in New York and rents are lower. So they're taking advantage of lower rents, but they're making the commitment to New York. They were doing in December and January and February, even before we got through the COVID crisis. And then even in luxury homes, everyone talks about the luxury market, where in New York and Manhattan, it's defined as $4 million or more. We're now on our, I think it's something like our 12th week of having over 30 luxury contracts signed per week, which is a record, 12 weeks. And last week we had 52 contracts signed of over $4 million or more in Manhattan. So that tells you is the talent and the people want to be back to New York and they're committed. So if the talent's here, then the companies are going to be here. And that self-reinforcing positive cycle that drove New York over the last decade will continue. Now on the office building side of things, just to touch, it's not going to be the same, right? We're leaving what I call the new abnormal of having to coexist with the virus being active to being contained to this new normal. And in this new normal, there's been 10 years of innovation in 10 months that we all have to adapt and understand the positives about that and the challenges that are a byproduct of that. So there'll be new things that have happened that are great, but there's also been acceleration of obsolescence and dislocation of businesses and properties that can't compete anymore and jobs that don't have the normal place anymore because it's taken over by technology and things of that nature. So that's got to be focused on. And the genie's out of the bottle on remote work, right? People have realized that
it can be done.
Right, that it can be done. And now I don't think it's a way of life, and I don't think I think it became clear to the employee that working from home was really living at work. There was no beginning, there was no end. And so you could do it for a period of time, but it was really challenging. And it came clear to the employer that you can do it to play defense for a period of time, but you can't do it to play offense to grow your business. So the new reimagination is going to be, how do we take the best of the workplace, which is coming together as a community, mentorship, collaboration, ideation, and the benefits of remote work to enhance quality of life, and reimagine that as we go forward. And that is going to be, to me, over this next 12 months, one of the defining, the outgrowths of COVID that's going to impact us for this next generation. And so I think that, we're now, and we've turned all of our energy of our lab and our design teams and our customer service teams to try to understand, research teams to understand what might be happening and help prepare our customers to think about the best way to set themselves up as they come back to work, and then to monitor what's working, what's not working, and give their team members tools to be as productive as possible. So just like you think about tools about how people wear watches or wearables for health and wellness, it's going to be the same thing about productivity and work-life balance, and how measuring, if I'm coming to the office place, how did I get here? Who'd I see? What I do? Was it worth it? How can I enhance that experience? And when I'm home, similar type of, what are the metrics that are there? And so I think and the good news is the technology's there now for this, and it never was before. And so it's going to, but it's what the big shift is, companies are now going to have to think about their employees the way they think about their customers. If you think about it, if you're a company that's selling a good to a customer, how much money do you spend on research, on understanding, who you're competing against, where that customer, would shop, where would they look for your product, what else would they be buying, what's the things they like and they didn't like. They spend a tremendous amount of money. The amount they spend on their talent is less than 1/10 than they spend on that customer research. Yet that talent is what drives their growth, right? So how do you create that sense of talent loyalty, like customer loyalty, by getting transparency of how your team members are working, how they're engaging, how they're collaborating, how they're being mentored, and having visibility about that, true, tangible, insights that you can then make sure you're adjusting the way you approach that in a manner that ensures that you're getting the best and brightest to stay with you the longest.
So that's what I was saying before. I love your passion about this. It's not you're reading from some, group of cards here. This is coming from the heart, and you really feel it, and comes from those beach chairs. You can still see Grandma holding the beach chairs. But so one of the things that happens when I do these kinds of interviews is it pops into my head, geez, I can't ask that question, and I'm not asking the question, but boy, I'd love to know who you're supporting for mayor.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting.
I think I'll just say this. What I will say is this is an incredibly important election, and I've been doing these series, what I call Recalibrate Reality, on a weekly basis this year, where I've been interviewing influencers and people that are part of the New York fabric about how do you recalibrate reality for New York City to come back more equitable, more sustainable, and more prosperous. And I end every interview asking that question, not who would you choose for mayor, but if you were asked by the mayor who's elected, what advice you would give them to help best position the city to achieve that, what would your answer be? And I had like Brian Chesky on, from the CEO of Airbnb. So why? I had the governor on, had Senator Schumer on. I've had, activists on, artists on. But it's interesting when you hear it. But one thing that comes through is that you need someone that is going to lay out a clear vision for the future of New York. And while it's going to, there is this inequality that's gotten widened, it can't be the approach is there's a tale of two cities and I'm supporting one part of the city. It has to be, we have a vision and we need to come together as a city in a united front to solve that, to make this a more prosperous, more equitable city. But it can't be done one versus the other. So business needs to be part of the solution. Civics need to be part of the solution. The philanthropic organizations need to be part of the solutions. Government needs to be part of the solution. But we all need to come together as part of the solution. And that's not the way it's been recently. And you can't take nuanced challenges and try to create extreme policies because they make good headlines.
Right.
So you can't
pandering to one side or the other.
Right. And you can't take things like, we have clearly, you want people to be safe and quality of life. I always say, it comes down, you can't have anything prosperity unless you have public safety. And I know we have to have, we've had challenges with police and we need police reform, but it can't become defund the police as the headline. The answer is, let's address the problem. Let's address it, in a way that is dealing with the root issues rather than just trying to create a good tweet or a good headline that people are rallying and don't even know the underlying circumstances or the people that are really being impacted by it, which are basically the brown and black communities who don't even want to defund the police. They want more police. They want more police, but they want the police to treat them well and fairly, and they want the bad apples to be gone, right? And so that's, I think, a big piece of it also. Yeah, but I can go on forever, so I don't want to.
No, and you did great. So we I wouldn't say laughed about it, but we both agreed the other day that we both miss Anthony Bourdain. You do a lot of restaurant deals in your buildings and things. What's the next hot concept for that? Anything that you're seeing from the restaurant space, which again is one of the most important things we need to bring back. For God's sakes, if I'm not going into the city and eating at Sparks or wherever the hell it is, I'm missing out. So what's the next sort of concepts that you're looking at?
Yeah, so a couple of things there, right? And I think that, and I'll give you just a couple of layouts as this plays through. One is, I think you're going to see more restaurants lean into the essence of what makes New York great, which is its multicultural diversity. So we've just recently signed a lease with Marcus Samuelson for a concept who has has done Red Rooster up in Harlem and others, well known. Just came a book, fascinating guy, was Ethiopian, adopted by a Swedish family, and then became a chef, and here is in New York. And he's leaning in to, again, the essence of his background and that culture, and so that you have something unique, but that still has a sense of comfort food. That still is something that's not, I don't want to say, it's not the foo-foo type of food. I think coming out of COVID, there's going to be more of a demand for comfort, and but again, embracing things that you're not going to be making your own kitchen. We've all, cooked more and had home cooked meals over the last year than ever before. So I think that's something that is going to be a key. And then I think more broadly, the relationship between building owners and restaurants are going to need to change. And where we need to look at our restaurants and our small businesses as part of the ecosystem that make our communities stronger and our partners. And in reality, there's an old saying that, a restaurant's a tenant when things are good and they're your partner when things are bad, right? And so you might as well just get to the partner part and ride the good and the bad versus just the bad. And so I think, restructuring the economics so that they're more revenue and performance driven and focusing on making them part of the character and quality of life of that community. And then, having the right alignment as you go forward, I think will be something that we'll see more of. Part of the challenge with that, frankly, is the institutional side with lenders and others haven't yet adapted to that, right? So you have to get through that. But I think that's going to be something that we'll see as well. And then the last thing I'll say is, listen, we lost 30% of our restaurants in New York City because of COVID. And the men and women that ran these restaurants and worked for these restaurants, they put their heart and soul, they put their savings into these establishments. And frankly, they viewed this not only as their business, this was their asset, just like someone's home is their asset, right? And all of a sudden it evaporates to no fault of their own, right? COVID comes in and wipes them out.
Goodbye restaurant.
Right. And so to be able to have, to overcome that experience and have the courage to start again, right? To say, I'm going to go do this again. I'm going to borrow more, put my savings in. It's hard. So I think we're going to also need some policies and systems and funding to help these entrepreneurs take that risk again and be willing to start going and reopening restaurants.
So, Scott, we're almost out of time, but I want to thank you so much. You've got so many thoughts on so many different topics. I think we could go on for another hour. But the panel you mentioned coming up next is Darlene Pope moderating. She is our event chair and also the president of Plan On Software now. And Corey Clark from your organization is on. I believe there's another fellow from Microsoft on that panel too. And so it sounds like a really interesting one. But I really want to thank you. Please, everyone who's listening to us, go into the Purple platform and go see the exhibitor booths that we have. It looks like a live trade show. You'd be amazed at how realistic it is. And Scott, again, I want to thank you. And let's stay in touch. I'd love to keep you on our roster because I love hearing what you have to say.
No, thanks, Rich. I appreciate the time today. And thank you for hosting us.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us. And we'll talk again soon. We'll see you for the next panel at 12:15.